So pizza making with dough, then sauce, then cheese, top, bake into the oven to make a baking steel pizza. It's going to be phenomenal. Let's get right into the dough. This is our 72-hour dough recipe. I've got my dough container here, and I have 500 grams of organic bread flour from Central Milling. This is beautiful flour. I love this on a baking steel in a 500-degree oven. I can link to show you guys where to get this from. I'm using a digital scale to weigh all my ingredients the most accurate way, which speaks. I've already got my. We go like this. Let's see exactly what's going on here. I've got my flour in there. I have 500 grams of flour, and next I'm going to add 16 grams of sea salt. And so I just kind of put my salt in. My scale's already zeroed out. Once I hit 16, boom, I'm done. I'm going to take my whisk and just whisk this up. All right, super easy. Skill level is like for a 5th grader, okay? Now I'm going to use some active dry yeast from Fleshman's. I'm going to use 1 gram. My micro scale is still broken. My best guess is about the size of a dime. That might be a little heavy. That's 1 gram of active dry yeast. I place that in my same container. And I'm going to whisk it around. Okay, I can shake this container a little bit and whisk. All right, so now I'm going to zero my scale out again. I hit the tare button, which is T-A-R-E. It zeroes it out with my container on top. And next, I'm going to take some filtered water and just pour it in. When I hit 350, I know it's enough. 290, 320, 348, 354. So I'm a little bit heavy. That's okay. Move my digital scale out of the way. Here's my flour, salt, yeast, and water. And now I'm just going to kind of spread it out with my dough scraper here. Right? Just like that. Next, what I'll do, I'm going to take one of my hands. You guys have seen me do this before. Take one of my hands and place it in the dough. Take my bracelet off because I don't want to get no dough all over it. So my hand goes into the container and I just press. And I mix. I'm kind of just pressing all the dry clumps of flour out of this. My other hand is ready to grab a phone, do something else if needed, right? A little flour stuff. So one hand dry, one hand wet. And I do this, I can scrape up the sides for about 2 or 3 minutes. And as I like, I can scrape the sides here as I'm going. What I like about these containers is I'm not getting it, my mess all over the counter. Just kind of keeping everything contained in the container, right? After about 2 or 3 minutes, I'm going to stop this a little bit early just for the sake of class here today, right? I can scrape off my hands, press it out, boom. I would probably just get these corners a little bit better and press all the flour in as much as I can. I know I have the exact right ingredients in here. Next, what I'm going to do, clean my hand off one more time. Boom. One more press. I'll take my cover. I'm going to cover this up, counter at room temp, right, for 24 hours. After 24 hours, can't see what I'm doing right now. I'm washing my hands. After 24 hours, I'm going to take the same dough and I'm going to place it into the fridge. I'll put it in the fridge for 1 or 2 more days, depending when I'm making pizza. Ultimately, I want to give it at least 24 hours in the fridge. So it'll be a 48-hour, which is what we have today, a 48-hour fermentation. That's that simple, okay? So today, I removed it from the fridge and I made a dough ball. I'm going to make a dough ball now for you guys. You can see how I do that. And, you know, I made enough. This is enough for about 3 or 4 dough balls. I make a double batch of this weekly and I keep it in my fridge almost all the time. So the day I'm making pizza, which for me is almost a few times a week, I'm going to remove 1 or 2 dough balls each time and then place this back in the fridge so it can ferment for like 3, 4, 5 days. I always have dough on demand. So I keep this container in my fridge. And if I don't want to make pizza, guess what? I can make bread. And we did bread, I think last week. Did we do bread last week? I forget. It's phenomenal, right? So bread, pizza on demand, dinner rolls, you name it. It's incredible. So let's get into making a dough ball next. All right, so what I'll do, I'll do this in front of you first. You see this here? I'm just gonna lightly coat it in flour, right? Lightly coat it. I'm gonna flour my hands up. Okay. And now I'm going to do, and there's a million different ways of doing this. What I like to do is take it, press my fingers in lightly, and just close. And then I turn my hands like this. I grab each side and I press again and close. And then I turn it. I'm going to show you a different angle in 2 seconds. So I press in and then close and then turn. Now let's do it from here. So you guys can see exactly what I'm doing. I'm grabbing the side, I'm pressing in. It's not a stress ball, okay? I'm being gentle. I don't want to rip it. I'm just lightly pressing. If it gets stuck on my hands at all, I'm going to put some more flour. So I don't want it getting stuck. I don't want to rip the glutens apart, okay? Just press it in and close and then turn. I follow the same sequence about 20 times. Each time I do this, I'm getting some of the air out. Right? And it's getting more and more tough. Next, what I'll do is I'll take this smooth side of the dough, place it in my palm, and now I'm going to close it with my hand. I can pinch it pretty aggressively. Awesome. You got some bubbles showing already. So this is a 2-day dough. I will place this back inside my container and cover it up and let this dough ball rest for about 4 hours. Okay. And then it'll be chilled, relaxed. The glutens will relax at that point, and it'll be ready to stretch and make a dough making process. Like, right? I just made the dough. I made my dough balls after 2 days. And again, I can make these whenever I feel like it, going into my fridge and making another one. Okay. Any questions here? We can take a pause here because the next step is going to be pizza making. So this is probably a good spot to stop. I'm going to put that in my container. I'm going to keep it covered. If I don't have my dough containers, I can use a sheet tray. I can cover it with plastic wrap. Just sprinkle a little flour on top of it so it doesn't stick to the plastic wrap. But really, it's going to be amazing. Super easy. Highest skill is going to be making those dough balls. Just takes a little bit of practice. Is that 4 hours on the counter or 4 hours in the fridge? So after I remove it from the fridge and I make my dough ball, I want my dough balls to rest at room temperature. We call that the final proof. And 4 hours seems to be pretty ideal. And for me, room temperature is about 70, 72 degrees. And that seems ideal. Should I flour both sides? I don't flour the bottom side. I just kind of sprinkle a little bit on top. I like to use my dough scraper to kind of scrape underneath it. If it's in my dough container or on the sheet tray of some sort, just kind of give yourself a nice flat area. I'm using, this is a central milling flour. It's their High Mountain organic flour. It's phenomenal. It handles great those long fermentations. It's a 13.5% protein content, which is positive. What that means is it can really handle a long fermentation. And I mean like 3, 4, 5 days without much, without any real issues. The glutens in bread and flour, after we ferment for a few days, begin to weaken. So you'll see when I stretch my dough out, because it's been fermenting for a couple of days, it's going to stretch super easy because the glutens have now weakened because we've been fermenting it. That also means that we can digest it better in our system when it comes through. It's not super tight gluten strands. Can I use 00 flour? Absolutely. Some people prefer it over bread flour. It's a dealer's choice, a coin flip. I've just used them both quite a bit. I find at 500 degrees on a baking steel, I have not found a flour that's better than the central milling. Can I freeze the dough balls? Yes, great question. In fact, we have a new blog coming out this week on freezing dough. The short answer is definitely yes. When I freeze the dough, I ferment it for 1 or 2 days. This is if I know I'm going to freeze dough. I ferment it for 1 or 2 days. I make my dough balls and then I freeze right away. I don't want those to proof at all. And we have more detail on that coming out this week. All right. What changes depending on how much yeast you use? What would happen if you added 2 grams? Oh, great question. If I'm freezing my dough, I will add more yeast. I will sneak in 2 grams instead of 1 gram, maybe even 3, because some of the yeast is going to die in the freezer. So if I know I'm freezing it, I will add a little bit more. Not much changes as far, 1 to 2 or 3, not a huge difference, but yeast, I don't know. You don't need that much. I guess we just use a micro amount because we find we don't really need a lot. So less is more in that case. What kind and size? Bumping up my container question again. What kind and size? Okay, that's a great question. I don't even know what size this is. Might be, I don't know. I should know that answer. I think it's 4 quarts, maybe. That would be a gallon. Coupon, look that up on my website. The dough container.
Where is that?
Yeah, if someone wants to go on our website, the dough container will tell you the exact size. I should know that. I don't, off the top of my head. But anyway, this is awesome because it's got a lid and the cover. I can make 1,000 batch, so I can hold up to like 7 or 8 doughs inside of there, which is awesome. 2, I don't know what that is. It's so weird. Oh, you know what it is? I'm getting a phone call as well. Sorry, guys. All right. I hope that answers that. Do you ever use a Polish or Biga pre-ferment? I do. Yes. I have used a Polish or a Biga before, and that just means where I make like a pre-dough before I mix my dough. Oh, it's a 5-liter container. This is 5 liters. I do, but I find like when I do a 3 or 4 day ferment, I'm kind of doing the same thing. So I find that this saves a step. I mix my dough the same day and just let it go. So in the room temperature is more like high 70s. Should it be 4 hours short? Oh, good question. If it's hot out, yeah, you could probably keep an eye on it. 3 hours is probably adequate, but not much shorter than that. That would make sense. Awesome. But not always as light and airy as yours. Consistency. So Jim, I'm assuming you're measuring. What kind of flour are you using? It makes a big difference. Also, you want to master making those dough balls. I can't stress that enough. It takes a lot of practice. What we're doing, we're tightening that ball up, getting some of the air out. Then we're trapping all the natural gases inside by sealing it. So when it goes to expand on that final proof, it becomes airy and light. The outer side starts to split apart when I'm folding and pressing. Have fold too much? Yes. So Audrey, and I can't stress this enough, when we're making the dough balls, and this is why it does take practice, really need to be gentle. When I pressed in my dough, I'm going to show you again. Like when I press my dough, like I press in and I fold, my hands are super, like, look at, I'm going in like maybe an inch and then I close it. I'm super patient. If it's starting to rip and tear, that means my hands don't have enough flour on them. I don't want it to stick to my hands. It's not a stress ball, so I'm being firm, but like really gentle at the same time. And you can see this, the lighting doesn't do this justice, but there's really, it's super smooth here, like a baby's butt. It's not going to be, not ripping at all. And I can't stress that enough. Just be really gentle with your dough ball. The only time I say to be aggressive is when we're pinching it closed. I can be a little aggressive there. It's that simple.